like what I like. Backstabbers, they smiling in your face. All the time they wanna take your place.
CBS, Philly International exploited our talent.
The OJs were one of the greatest R&B groups of all time, but do you know the sad truth about their lives? What really happened to the members behind the scenes? They had fame and success, but did they also face heartbreak and struggles? Some members had tragic endings while others dealt with betrayal. What secrets have finally come out? Let's uncover the shocking and heartbreaking truth about the OJs.
Get some cash money now?
Oh, plenty dollars. Can we get?
The story of the OJs began in Canton, Ohio.
But as you know, Ohio produced a lot of singers and bands and people that were very successful in the business.
A group of teenage friends with big dreams and a love for music came together in 1958. The original members were Eddie Levert, Walter Williams, William Powell, Bobby Massey, and Bill Iles. At first they called themselves the Triumphs, but later changed their name to the Mascots. They were just young boys trying to make it in the music world, singing doo-wop and hoping for a chance to shine. Their journey took a big turn when a DJ from Cleveland named Eddie OJ noticed them. He saw their potential and decided to help them. To honor him, they changed their name to the OJs. It was a new name, but they still had the same struggles. They worked hard, performing in small clubs and singing cover songs. They recorded some early tracks, including Lonely Drifter, but none of them became big hits. The music business was tough and success felt far away. The pressure of trying to make it was too much for some members. Bobby Massey and Bill Iles decided to leave the group. They couldn't handle the uncertainty of chasing fame without knowing if it would ever come. That left Eddie, Walter, and William as a trio. It was just the three of them now, but they didn't give up. They kept pushing forward, believing that their time would come. For years, they struggled. They sang anywhere they could, hoping for their big break. It wasn't until they moved to Philadelphia in 1972 that things finally changed. There they met two important producers, Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. These men were creating a new style of music called Philadelphia Soul, and they thought the OJs would be a perfect fit. Their first big hit under Gamble and Huff was Backstabbers.
Backstabbers, they smiling in your face. All the time they wanna take your place.
The song was a huge success, and suddenly the OJs were famous. More hits followed, like Love Train and For the Love of Money. They finally achieved their dream, but the road to success had been long and difficult. Not everyone could handle the pressures of fame, but the OJs had made their mark in music history. The OJ's journey was not always easy. Along the way, they faced personal struggles, including the heartbreaking loss of one of their founding members, William Powell. Powell was there from the start, singing alongside Eddie Levert and Walter Williams. They worked hard for years before finally making it big. When they did, it was like a dream come true. Songs like Love Train and Backstabbers made them famous. They traveled the world, performed for huge crowds, and enjoyed great success. But behind the scenes, Powell was dealing with something much more serious.
Well, what's new with you?
Everything, the old is new and everything.
I know something that's new about you. I heard a commercial on the radio.
It started with small signs. He often felt tired, weak, and not himself. At first, he tried to ignore it, thinking it was just exhaustion from their busy schedule, but as time went on, the symptoms got worse. No matter how much he rested, he didn't feel better. Finally, he went to the doctor and received terrible news. He had cancer. This was devastating for Powell and the whole group. He was still young and had so much ahead of him. Cancer treatments were not as advanced back then, and there was not much that doctors could do. Powell wanted to keep performing, but the disease made it harder and harder. He loved being on stage, but his body could not keep up with the demanding schedule. Eddie and Walter were heartbroken. They had been together since the beginning, like brothers. Seeing Powell struggle was painful for them. The OJs had always been a strong team, and now one of them was suffering. They knew he needed to focus on his health, but it was hard to imagine the group without him. Eventually, Powell had to step away from the OJs. It was not an easy decision, but he had no choice. His health was getting worse, and he could no longer perform. The group brought in a new member, Sammy Strain, to keep going, but Powell's absence was deeply felt. Fans missed him, and his bandmates felt like a piece of their family was missing. Powell spent his last months surrounded by loved ones. Even though he was sick, he stayed strong and fought as hard as he could. Sadly, he passed away at a young age. His loss was a great sadness to the music world. He helped create the unique sound of the OJs, and his voice will always be remembered. Walter Williams's illness.
Seems like I always fall short of being worthy.
Walter Williams has been a big part of the OJs for many years. He and Eddie Levert helped make the group famous with their soulful music and powerful performances. But as time went on, both men faced serious health problems. These challenges forced them to think about their lives and make some tough choices. Walter, in particular, had to deal with a health issue that changed his life. It all started when Walter began feeling strange pains in his body. At first, he thought it was just normal aches from traveling and performing for so many years. Being in a band like the OJs meant long tours, late nights, and a lot of physical effort. Walter believed he was just tired and that the pain would go away with rest, but that didn't happen. Instead, the pain got worse. He started feeling weak and his body didn't move the way it used to. This worried him, but like many people, he didn't want to believe something was really wrong. After some time, the pain became too much to ignore. Walter finally went to the doctor hoping for a simple answer, but the news was not what he expected. The doctors told him he had spinal stenosis. This is a condition where the spaces in the spine become too small, pressing on the nerves. It causes pain, weakness, and sometimes numbness. For someone like Walter, who was always moving on stage and performing with energy, this was a big problem. The thought of not being able to perform the way he used to was heartbreaking. As time went on, the pain got worse. It became clear that Walter couldn't keep up with his usual schedule. In 2010, after struggling for a while, he made a tough decision. He decided to step away from performing to focus on his health. This was not easy for him. He had been with the OJs for so many years and he loved performing, but he knew that if he didn't take care of himself, things would only get worse. The band supported him completely. They understood that his health was the most important thing. Even though the fans missed him, everyone wanted him to get better. Walter's road to recovery was not quick or easy. He went through physical therapy, working with doctors to help him get stronger. There were good days and bad days. Some days the pain felt impossible to handle, but Walter didn't give up. He focused on healing and did everything he could to improve. He also leaned on his faith, believing that he would get better. His family, friends, and fans gave him love and encouragement, which helped him keep going. After 2 years of hard work and determination, Walter was able to return to the stage. By 2012, he was performing again with the OJs. He wasn't completely back to his old self right away, but he slowly regained his strength. He proved that with dedication and support, it was possible to overcome even the biggest challenges.
The family of R&B singer Sean Levert wants the FBI to look into his death. The 39-year-old Levert, who formed the band Levert with his older brother Gerald in the 1980s, died on March 30th.
Another member who has faced heartbreaking loss is Eddie Levert, best known as the lead vocalist of the OJs. He has spent decades making soulful music that touches people's hearts. But behind his success, Eddie has faced deep personal pain. He lost both of his sons, Gerald and Sean, in heartbreaking ways. These losses changed his life forever. Gerald Levert was Eddie's eldest son. He was a talented singer with a powerful voice. Gerald followed in his father's footsteps and made a name for himself in the music industry. He had a successful solo career and was also part of the group Levert, along with his brother Sean and childhood friend Mark Gordon. Gerald was charming and full of life. He had many hit songs, including Casanova and Baby Hold On to Me, which was a duet with his dad. People loved his music, but not many knew that he was dealing with health issues in private. On a tragic day, Gerald passed away suddenly at the age of 40. His death was shocking to everyone. He had been taking prescription medications and over-the-counter drugs to deal with pain and sleep problems. Sadly, the combination of these drugs caused his untimely death. The news was devastating for Eddie. Losing a child is one of the worst things a parent can go through. Eddie and Gerald were not just father and son, they were best friends. They worked together, laughed together, and supported each other. Gerald's death left a hole in Eddie's heart that could never be filled. Just when Eddie was trying to cope with the loss of Gerald, another tragedy struck. Less than 2 years later, his younger son, Sean Levert, also passed away. Sean was 39 years old and, like his brother, was involved in music. He was part of Levert and had built a strong career, but his death was surrounded by even more sadness and questions. Sean was serving time in jail for unpaid child support when he suddenly fell sick. Witnesses said he was acting strangely, screaming and banging on his cell door. Jail staff restrained him, but his condition got worse. He was taken to a hospital where he passed away. His death was later linked to complications from sarcoidosis, a disease that affects the organs. He was also suffering from withdrawal after not receiving his anxiety medication in jail. His passing raised many concerns about how he was treated while locked up. For Eddie, losing both of his sons in such a short time was almost unbearable. His sons were his pride and joy. They were not just his children, they were his legacy. The pain of losing them tested his strength, his faith, and his will to keep going.
It's a little sentimental part. I get a chance to do some of the things that I did with my son, Gerald.
Eddie has spoken about how these losses changed him forever, but he found comfort in music and faith. He has kept his son's memories alive by continuing to sing and share their stories. Though the pain will never go away, he honors Gerald and Sean every day, both on and off the stage. Aside from the tragic details of their personal life, they also faced tragic events as a group. Behind the scenes, things were not always easy for them. Like many famous artists, they had to deal with serious money problems and legal battles that could have ended their careers. The music industry looks glamorous from the outside, but for the OJs, there was a darker side. They had to fight for their money, their music, and their future.
CBS, Philly International exploited our talent.
In the early years of their career, the OJs signed a record deal with King Records. At that time, many music companies took advantage of artists, and King Records was no different. The group worked hard, recorded music, and started to gain popularity. But when it came to getting paid, things were unfair. The company was making money from their songs, but the OJs were not seeing much of it. This was a common problem for many artists in the 1960s and 1970s. Record labels controlled the contracts, and the musicians often had little power to change things. The OJs realized they were in a bad situation, but getting out of it was not easy. After some time, the OJs decided to leave King Records. But breaking away from a record label is not simple. They had to fight for their rights, and it was a stressful and long process. Eventually, they moved on to Philadelphia International Records in 1972. This was a big turning point for them. Philadelphia International was run by Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, two talented producers who helped shape the Philly soul sound. With this new label, the OJs became even more successful, releasing some of their biggest hits. But even though they were now making more money, financial problems still followed them. Like many other artists, the OJs had to deal with complicated contracts. Even when a record label seemed to be fair, there were still hidden details in the agreements that worked against the musicians. Many artists signed contracts without fully understanding them, and later they realized they were not making as much money as they should. For the OJs, this meant that even when they were at the top of the charts, they still had to worry about money. As the years went by, the OJs faced more financial struggles. In the 1980s and 1990s, they got into legal battles over royalties and ownership of their songs. Their music was being played everywhere, on the radio, on TV, and later on streaming services. But when it came to collecting their share of the money, things became complicated. The music industry is full of legal rules about who owns what, and sometimes artists don't get what they deserve. The OJs had to go to court to fight for their rights, which was another stressful and expensive process. Money problems didn't just come from their record labels. The group members also had personal financial struggles. Eddie Levert, one of the lead singers, had to deal with the challenges of managing his own money. When you become rich and famous, it's easy to spend too much or trust the wrong people. Many artists don't get proper financial advice and they end up losing a lot of money. The OJs had to learn how to manage their earnings while also supporting their families and dealing with the pressures of fame. Another major problem the OJs faced was dealing with dishonest business partners. At one point, they had a manager who they believed was taking advantage of them. This led to another legal fight. Many artists trust managers to handle their money, but sometimes these managers care more about making money for themselves than helping the artists. The OJs had to learn the hard way that they needed to be careful about who they trusted. This was a lesson that many musicians learned too late.
Eddie, you got anything smart to say to me?
Yep.
Okay, say it.
We gonna keep giving you dollars to keep your hair cut like that.
The OJs became one of the biggest R&B groups in the 1970s. Fans expected them to keep making the same kind of music they loved, but the music world doesn't stay the same forever. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, disco music became huge. Then came hip-hop, new wave, and pop. The OJs had a choice. Should they stick to their classic soulful sound or try something new? It was a tough decision because changing too much could mean losing old fans, but not changing at all could mean falling behind. The OJs tried to find a balance. They kept making soulful ballads, but they also experimented with new sounds. Some of their albums in the 80s and 90s mixed their classic style with modern beats. However, not all fans were happy with the changes. Some people loved their older songs and didn't want anything different. Others appreciated that they were trying to grow. It was hard to please everyone, but the OJs kept pushing forward, determined to stay in the game. The pressure didn't just come from fans. The music business is all about making money. Record labels, managers, and promoters all wanted the OJs to keep making hit songs and go on more tours. The group had to keep up with new artists who were gaining popularity, but they never wanted to sell out. They believed in their music and didn't want to change just to make quick money. Staying true to themselves was more important than following trends. Over time, balancing creativity and success became even harder. By the 1990s, hip-hop, pop, R&B, and boy bands were ruling the charts. The OJs had to think carefully about how to stay relevant. Many older artists were being pushed aside for younger stars. The industry was changing fast and not everyone could keep up, but the OJs stayed strong. They knew their fans still loved their music, and they kept performing and recording.
Oh, girl, I like what you like what I like.
Many people think the OJs became famous overnight, but that is not true. It took years of hard work for them to reach the top. Like many artists, they started small, performing in local clubs and trying to get noticed. The music industry can be very difficult, and they had to deal with many ups and downs. Sometimes they faced unfair deals, and at times they did not make the money they deserved. But instead of giving up, they kept pushing forward. Their love for music kept them going, and their hard work finally paid off. The OJs created some of the most unforgettable songs in soul music. Their albums Backstabbers 1972 and Ship Ahoy 1973 were huge successes. Songs like Love Train, For the Love of Money, and Backstabbers became anthems of their time. These songs were not just fun to listen to, they had a deeper meaning. They spoke about important issues in society such as love, betrayal, and money. Their music reflected what was happening in America in the 1970s. People connected with their songs because they told real stories that many could relate to. Even though the OJs were dealing with their own struggles, they used their music to express their emotions and experiences. One of the most amazing things about the OJs is how they stayed together as a group despite all the challenges they faced. Many groups break up after a few years because of disagreements or personal problems, but the OJs understood that their music was bigger than any personal issues. They knew they had a responsibility to their fans and to future generations. Even when things got tough, they stayed committed to their music and their message. This dedication is part of what makes them so special. The O'Jays' legacy is about more than just music. They had a huge impact on R&B and the entire music industry. They were pioneers of Philadelphia soul, a style of music that became popular in the early 1970s. This genre mixed smooth melodies with deep lyrics, creating songs that were both emotional and powerful. The O'Jays were one of the first groups to make this style famous. Their music was not just about love songs, it also talked about social issues. They were not afraid to sing about topics like injustice, greed, and the struggles of everyday people. This made their music stand out and gave it a lasting impact. The O'Jays were not only musical pioneers, they also helped open doors for black artists in the mainstream music industry. In the 1970s and 1980s, it was not always easy for black musicians to get the recognition they deserved, but the O'Jays' success helped change that. Their popularity showed that soul and R&B music had a place in the mainstream charts. They became role models for other artists, proving that hard work and talent could break barriers. One of the biggest honors of their career came in 2005 when they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This was a major achievement and recognition of their contribution to music. It was a proud moment for them and their fans. They had spent decades making music, and this honor confirmed their place among the greatest artists in history. But awards and honors are not the only things that define the O'Jays' legacy. Their real impact can be seen in how their music has influenced so many people. Many artists have sampled, covered, and been inspired by their songs. Their music is still played today at parties, on the radio, and in movies. Younger generations continue to discover and appreciate their sound. Their songs remind us of what great soul and R&B music should be, music that is full of heart, passion, and truth. Even as the world changes, the O'Jays' music remains timeless. Their songs carry messages that are still relevant today. Whether it's about love, money, or life struggles, their music speaks to people across generations. That is why the O'Jays' legacy will never fade. Their journey was not always easy, but they left behind something truly special, music that will live on forever.